Well, guys, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on a call with me and share your story. So, 8 years ago, I did jujitsu for about 4 months. I got put into a neck crank, felt something
Okay.
pop in my neck, and then went to the doctor next day. He said it was just a sprain. But I made the choice then that to quit. Didn't know if the risk was worth it. So recently, I've been thinking about getting back into it, and then I found your story and watched some of your videos, read your article, and now I'm kind of having second thoughts. So maybe you just want to start by sharing your story, your background, and the work you're doing to spread some of the risks.
Yeah. So first of all, um, when it comes to participating in jiu-jitsu for the overall average person, not the IBJJ competitor, not just the average person, I think jiu-jitsu is one of the greatest pastimes that somebody can do outside of their profession. Outside of for me, I used to play golf before I found jiu-jitsu, and that would lead to spending all day hanging out, drinking poor choices in food, and it just wasn't resonating with me. And then before I found jiu-jitsu, you know, I, my competitive desires were taken out on a golf course. You spend all day playing golf, and you're sucking down brews and having hamburgers and cheeseburgers afterwards, and it just didn't end up being a healthy lifestyle. Then I found Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and martial arts, and it really did change my life. It gave me that camaraderie, that community. It gave me that purpose, a reason to train. It was very challenging as a white belt, blue belt, at first, because you're just, you're getting smashed, and but you have your good days and your bad days. But once you get through that cloud of I don't know how to explain it. Like it's just once the jujitsu's in your blood and you're doing it consistently 2 to 3 days a week, it just turns into such a healthy lifestyle because you're taking care of your body. You're making better choices with food. My point is saying this is I really do recommend Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the average person. I think people are lacking purpose. They're lacking community. They're lacking brotherhood and sisterhood. They're lonely. They're fighting depression. They're not making healthy choices with their life. They're drinking too much. They're eating bad foods, and really, jujitsu cures all of that, I believe. So there's so much positive benefit with Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That being said, um, so going back to the question, you know, if a newcomer or somebody like yourself, you know, tried it 8 years ago, had a bad experience with my neck, which which is something that we are bringing attention to, but in the past, and even still, I do believe that many people are not fully aware of the consequences of neck cranks and real hard neck manipulations. I think as a jiu-jitsu community, we're kind of blind to that. And because of that, that might be, other than maybe I get my ankle popped, because I didn't tap, or some crazy guy goes for a heel hook or a knee bar, or maybe I don't tap to an arm bar, or, stuff like that happens in jiu-jitsu. Don't get me wrong. And that's all everybody's responsibility to train safer with our partners. That being said, necks and the manipulation of the necks, that's something that I think has been uh, it hasn't we still don't really understand the consequences. We know the consequences of getting our heel hooked and our joints popped out, and that seems to be a really big deal. But just the cranking of the necks, that's I think we're missing the that part of jujitsu. And sometimes the word, just so you know, Angela, sometimes the words really are hard for me to come out because of my stroke, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Um, so as I try to gather my thoughts, it's just they don't. It's a change. So um, the I don't want to steer people away from doing jiu-jitsu. I want to bring awareness to to the gyms and the dojos to say there's danger in how we handle each other's necks, and that's plain and simple. With that could bring awareness to more gyms, and people may start to do need to start thinking about and training safer. And so I'm very upfront with all the I own a gym. I own two gyms in Wisconsin, and I'm very upfront with people about what happened to me. And because of that, um, I feel like I'm bringing awareness to them. I'm not trying to scare them away, but at the same time, I'm kind of setting the table to say, guys, we really have to think about how we're handling each other's necks. So it's one of those things. And you know, I've been training now for 11, 12 years. Um, it's been a part of my life. It's very healthy in that way, but you're right. Like sometimes I do step back and say, man, is this the safest thing? Is what we're doing the safest thing? And is this something I can really sustain for the rest of my life? Even after my stroke, I have a stint in my neck. I'm still practicing jiu-jitsu. That stint, if that's damaged or dislodged, it's not a good thing. But I'm aware of that danger. Um, but there's so many health benefits that jiu-jitsu brings me. Like I mentioned, the community, the camaraderie, the health benefits, the taking care of my body. It gives me something to 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 think about. It gives me something other than just work. You know,
Yeah.
um, it gives me something to think about when I'm out eating or drinking. You know what I mean? It's like, how do I want to feel tomorrow? How do I want to perform tomorrow? And that's what I think jujitsu holds people accountable. So there's so much health benefit to jujitsu. Like jujitsu is the healthy sport. It's like everybody's healthy who does it for the most part, or at least they're on that. They're like, for me, I wasn't the healthiest when I started, but I started to get healthier because of the sport. Okay, so 2 years ago, for 10 years, 9, 10 years, I practiced a sport. Just, I was careful about my heel hooks. I was careful about not getting my elbows popped. But just like everybody else, I would let people attack my neck. I would even let people get a hold of my neck and see how far I could push past my limits, or see how far, let somebody get a deep choke so I can work on my escape. Well, we found out that that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world to do. I think most people think about necks, and there's probably some thought about, getting your neck cranked a little bit. It doesn't hurt, but, or it hurts, but, maybe we go to the chiropractor. You know what I mean? I've had, times where there was days where I'm driving, I can't even look over my shoulder. You know what I mean? Because I've maybe had some type of muscle pull, but never in a million years did I think ever that I could have a stroke. So what happened to me was um, ongoing damage to my carotid arteries at one point caused a small micro tear in the carotid artery, which they call a carotid artery dissection. When people think dissection, in their minds they think split right down the middle, bleeding all over the place. That's not even close to what it is. It's just a tiny little micro tear. When the carotid artery tears, then it forms a clot. The clot helps heal the artery. Um, Over time, the clots typically, if they in a carotid artery dissection, in a lot of, it does happen more than we think. Not even just jiu-jitsu practitioners. It happens to young, healthy moms all the time. I'm in a Facebook group, and it's all young, healthy moms, and there are a lot of young women with carotid artery dissections, and they're not doing jiu-jitsu. So it happens to a lot of people. Um, Carotid artery dissections. A lot of them are misdiagnosed, and a lot of people, the clots can repair themselves. It never shoots to the brain, and you don't really have any issues. You don't have any strokes. So um, some people are completely unaware that they had a dissection, and they go on through life, and nothing ever happens to them. What happened to me, though, was I had a dissection. It did have a clot. I was not aware of it. When my training partner had me in a choke, he had me in a deep north south, and when it was in, he was holding really tight, but I felt like I could breathe. In my mind, hey, I can breathe. I'm not going out. Everything is a-okay. Well, what I didn't know was that at the time, because one of my carotids was closed shut from his bicep, the other one was looking for air and oxygen to the brain, and that was just enough pressure and force to shoot that clot all the way to the brain. Once it hit my brain, I was instantly paralyzed, couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't pick my body up, like completely laid out on the mat. No idea what's going on. Losing my memory, trying to think of things in my head. For example, what's my daughter's names again? It's I don't even know my daughter's names. They're asking me, what's your phone number? I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even, they were trying to show me. So was it 414? I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, what's next? They'd be like, is it one? Is it two? I'd be like, and then I just didn't even know. Like I had no idea. Like
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
crazy.
I don't even know. Next thing you know, they put me out right away. Um, and I wake up and my family's all around me. And I realized I survived whatever it was. They told me that you had a stroke. And they said it was, really my recovery is, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Like after somebody has a stroke, like they don't know what the recovery is. You might not walk. You might not talk. You might be walking on a cane the rest of your life, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, I woke up. They told me I had a stroke. It would be kind of like a hit or miss how you survived or how you survive. I was just completely in denial. And the last thing I wanted to think was, something like the sport could, something like this could happen in to me. I didn't want to hear somebody tell me that, jujitsu caused this. I didn't want to hear that. And that's what I was ended up being told. It was jujitsu did cause that. Um, you've got to kind of figure out if this is something that you want to do. You know what I mean? Doctors probably thought, they tell me, hey, probably shouldn't do it again. Um, and it's ironic, tomorrow I have my 2-year follow up with my neurologist. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. But I'm back on the mats. I'm training. I'm very careful about my neck. I don't put myself in specific positions anymore. I don't like to go inverted anymore. I try to be on top. When I shoot, I make sure that I'm circling out so that these guys can't get a hold of my head. I'm very lucky that I've got 12 years of jiu-jitsu under my belt, because I can still adapt my game and I have an advantage on most people. That versus some of the people who just started jiu-jitsu, a year and a half, 2 years ago. They're still trying to find their game. Like I said in the beginning of jiu-jitsu, it's tough. The first couple of years, you got to find your game. Um, the So what's happening, Angelo, is people are starting to have strokes from jiu-jitsu. I started compiling lists of survivors, just doing interviews like this. The reason I started doing the interviews was because I just wanted other people who were, if they're in the same situation, to have some access or reference to somebody else who had something similar to them. Because when I was in the hospital, I couldn't find any stories. There was one guy named Sean Eston. I found his story. That was the only story that I could find. And it sounded like he was in a rear naked choke and had a shot a clot and was in a coma. It was really bad. His parents ended up suing the gym that he went to. It didn't turn out well. I tried to reach out to him, but he never responded to my messages. So I decided and somebody called me. I did an interview for Jiu-Jitsu Times, and then somebody did call me and say, hey, Chris, well, I'm really interested in your story. I'm a martial artist. I had a dissection. It didn't come from jiu-jitsu, but, very curious to know if, people can train after this type of accident. You should document everything. So I started documenting my journey. And then from that, I doing the interviews, I started documenting everybody else's journey. Well, here we are, fast forward 2 years later, and I've got over 90 people on my spreadsheet that had a similar accident to myself. Um, with that list, doctors have reached out to me, and we have two doctors that are working with myself and my associate named Josh Farah. Josh is an emergency medical technician, and is a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, and had a dissection. He not only did he have a dissection, the first time he went in because of his dissection, it was missed by the doctors. So a lot of these people who are having massive strokes, the doctors are missing them in the ER. So that's why these emergency medical doctors are very interested in our stories, because that's where we need to, as a community, bring awareness to what's happening. How are strokes happening in young people that are doing jiu-jitsu, because they're relatively young and healthy. You think stroke, you think some gray-haired 90-year-old guy sitting in the chair, and that's usually what it is. But in jiu-jitsu, that's not what it is. It's young, healthy black belts, brown belts, purple belts, sometimes some blue and some white belts. And they're one of my friend Caroline. She's New Orleans' first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's been training for over 20 years. She's like 39. So she started when she was like 20. And this has been her life. She had really bad stroke,
Shit.
dissection, misdiagnosed. So now she has residual effects from the stroke. She's a teacher. She has a hard time going to her profession anymore because of this. Hardly rolls anymore. And I know that, she suffers just with, like all of us. I mean, there is depression that comes along with this whole thing, because your life really does change. My life definitely changed. From a financial standpoint, it changed. From a physical standpoint, it changed. From a mental standpoint, I've been trying to dig out of this hole for the last 2 years, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's momentum, but it's a tough barrier to cross. I love jiu-jitsu. I love it. I believe in it. It's 12 years now. It's like, now it's a habit. Like, I don't know how to go along without it. But at the same time, there's definitely got to be some um, education and awareness. I've got kids that play jiu-jitsu. I have students. I have families in my gym that play jiu-jitsu, and the last thing I want to ever see is something like this happening to them. So coaches have to be aware of this. Students have to be aware of it. Beginners who are getting back into the game need to be aware of it, and they need to know, hey, if somebody grabs my neck, I said to somebody the other day, I'm like, listen, dude, I'm like, if somebody grabs your neck and you don't know what's going on, or or what's happening, like, you're not sure if he's gonna submit me or if he's just holding me, he's just got a chin strap, whatever it is, just tap out and just say, hey, champ, listen, I'm brand new. I felt you grabbing my head or something and wasn't sure what you were gonna do. Maybe you can show me. Oh, well, I wasn't going to do anything. It was just a control. Oh, okay, great. Let's go. Let's keep rolling. Or no, I was about to rip a loop choke on you. Oh, okay. Well, what's a loop choke? You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like, jiu-jitsu people, as we get better, we know more submissions than the new people. So we can easily fool you, set you up, and put you in a wicked choke that's just pop. You know what I mean? I've been put in those before, and that's what I tell people now before I roll. I'm like, yo, just so you know, I'm like, still roll, still attack, chokes, whatever. I go, but I do have a stint in my neck. So what that means is, just please don't find some crazy choke and snap it. Like, if you know what I mean, like a crazy loop choke, like you set me up to pass and then all of a sudden, boom, you loop choke me out of the blue. Like, please don't do that. Please don't grab my head and then crank it. You know what I mean? Still try to choke me, still try to get my collars. I'm going to fight out of that. If you get too deep, I'm going to tap. But don't rip the neck. Don't control the neck. Don't try to throw me around with your neck. I just have to make that disclosure. At the same time, me being a stroke survivor myself, when I don't treat people's necks like that anymore. So that has changed the way that I'm playing with people. The gyms that have people who have had strokes in their gyms, they are starting to adapt their play. Um, and so that's a long, a long version of me trying to explain to somebody that I don't want to deter people from playing jujitsu, but I want people to be aware. It's not that I want people; they have to. People are dying. There are deaths on record that we have from this exact what I'm talking about. Strokes from jujitsu. Why are they coming? Why are they coming from? It's not from high blood pressure. It's not from um, there's a couple people that have some genetic disorders of some sort that have caused a stroke. There's a couple people, yes, on that 90-person list. However, that's not the majority. That's the out. Those are the outliers. The majority is young, healthy, um, with carotid artery dissections, and it's coming from, they can pinpoint, usually that's choke, that, oh, somebody hit me in a triangle choke, and the next thing you know, the room was spinning. There was my ears were chiming. There was, blurry vision on both sides or one side or whatever it was. Numbness in my arm, droopy face. Um, so there we are finding that there, maybe out of all the people that are doing jiu-jitsu, maybe it's not common. That's good. So that should tell you, probably a good idea for you to continue to train. Um, it's not common, but we certainly have to be aware of the that this is a possibility. And if we know that this is a possibility, if we know that this is a risk, um, then we can reduce the risk with awareness.
So, are the research that you're doing and the stories you're hearing, is there one common denominator you can narrow it down to? Like, is it people fighting under chokes too much, or is it just like regular training, regular choke, freak accident kind of scenarios?
Yeah, I mean it's all different. So, for example, one gentleman was just, he was having his students put him in triangles, and like there was two different guys. Both of them got it, um, vertebral dissection. So you got vertebral arteries on the back, and you got carotid arteries underneath the neck. The vertebral arteries dissections are also causing strokes, and those are coming from triangles. So like two different guys were just in the class. One guy, it was a gal, was like pulling down on the head to like really triangle the shit out of him in the instruction. So that type of stuff, that I can pinpoint is not a good idea. Another guy had a line of students that just kept putting him in triangle, and he just kept saying, yeah, no, you got to go a little bit deeper. Yeah, pull a little bit harder. So you're getting constantly choked. And then next thing you know is poof. Um, and then my friend Josh, who's a black belt, he was just posturing up in the gi, guys going for an X choke. So all the gi is wrapped around his neck, is pulling on those vertebral arteries as he's posturing in the guard, and that caused his dissection. So there's a black belt who mentioned that he thought the dissection came from just a cross face, somebody with a hard cross face, with collar grip. So um, yeah, it's coming from all over the place, you know what I mean? But it's the pressure on the neck. So people are very people are in the jiu-jitsu community seem to be very pessimistic that this is happening. Um, and they think it's just fluke accidents, like I said, hereditary, genetic. We just started working with these two medical doctors in Minnesota, and we're getting this information published. The first paper that we're going to publish is going to be peer-reviewed data. where we take the case studies with the permission of all of us for survivors, which I have contact with most of them personally. And we have a Facebook group, and just off of my YouTube channel and connecting on email, they're going to provide us with um, access to their medical records. It's not going to be our personal access. The hospital is going to hold it in a safe area for them. And then with that data, the doctors are going to be able to write 90 case studies, so that we can show, number one, this is what people are doing. There is a subgroup of culture that's rolling around on mats and cranking each other's necks. So doctors are aware of that, because doctors don't know what jiu-jitsu is. Most people don't know what jiu-jitsu is. So that's number one, bringing awareness to what jiu-jitsu is. So from there, letting them know the causes of the strokes in these jiu-jitsu practitioners, and making sure that they're getting the right tests done. It's even Josh, his first visit to the ER, they sent him home and called it vertigo. And then he went back later because he knew something was wrong. And then when somebody else looked at his chart on the CTA and MRA, they picked it up. They're like, oh no, there's a dissection right there. So they're really hard to find. So that's the biggest concern. And if you can't find these dissections, that's what's causing the strokes. So we're working with the doctors to write the case study, bring awareness to the medical community. Then once we have the review papers written in the medical journals, then I will pass those on back to the jiu-jitsu community and say, okay, I've done the interviews, I've written some blogs. You guys don't believe me? Fine. Here are the case studies, because that's what they want. Everybody wants, show us the case studies. So for the doctors to be able to go in and examine the data, and reaffirm that this is actually what's happening, and it's not it's not just a bunch of 265-pound diabetic, high blood pressure jiu-jitsu practitioners with 42-inch, waists. These are, like I said, a lot of these people are training for Pan Ams before they get I mean, I can't tell you how many people were training for the Pan Ams prior to their dissection. So you're training hard, you're not recovering, you're tired, you're fighting out of everything, and next thing you know, you have the accident. So yeah, that's what we're working on right now. Is we have that information gathered. We're working with the hospitals and the emergency medical doctors, going to get this stuff published so that the community has access to it. While we're going through the process, it's almost daily, Angelo, that people are reaching out to me with more stories. So I'm a busy man these days.
Yeah, no, it's amazing that you're doing that to help bring awareness, and hopefully, when I post this, people will reach out to you as well if they have similar
Yeah, I
stories.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah, for
man.
sure. So, is there anything that you would say, like, for people like me that are thinking of getting into jiu-jitsu, maybe heard these stories and they're kind of nervous now, of the
Yeah.
best way to go about it?
Number one, I think it would be great for you to walk in off the street into a new place. Either way, when you go to the gyms, like you don't want to sign up for the first place you walk into, right? So you're going to go on Google, find 5 different gyms, go have a conversation with each one of those instructors, ask them about their program, ask them about their community, ask them about the type of people that train there. There's some schools in my area, it's like, we're competition minded, everybody here competes, so you could probably assume that you're going to be in a situation where there's a lot of knot tapping and a lot of, attacking necks on a hardcore basis. And they probably don't want to hear about strokes. Then you got another gym over here, family orientated environment. Everybody, we're very big on safety, very big on community, very, you know, just want to have fun, more laid back environment. Either way, you have to go and talk to these coaches. You're going to have to ask them about their, what type of people train here. What do you expect as a coach? You should ask them too. Hey, do you roll with the students, or do you sit on the side and supervise the students? Quite frankly, I've read reports where it's like, articles where people say like, oh, you should roll with your students. I agree, you should roll with your students, but I think it's more important, especially in the beginner classes when you're working with people who are new. You shouldn't be rolling with everybody. You should be sitting on the side and you should be supervising every single one of the matches, so that if you see somebody ripping off cranks, you can say, hey, Gino, slow down. You're let go of that neck, move on, move to something else. You know what I mean? I think it's important that they supervise. So that's another question you can ask them. And then I think you should have that conversation with them. Hey, I'm concerned about what happened to me 8 years ago. I had somebody rip a neck. I was out of work for a couple of weeks, whatever it was. In the meantime, I found this guy, Chris Martin, and he had a stroke from jiu-jitsu. He's compiled a list of 90 other people, and stories are still coming out. Here's a link to his blog if you want to check it out. But what are your thoughts on that? Did you know that something like this did exist? If they say, no, I didn't know, that's probably what you're going to hear, because that's most of these guys. That's what I'm hearing from coaches. Like, never knew that something like this could exist. Fine. Is this something that you think you might do? Take a little bit of time to research, and if so, do you think that, me knowing as a new student coming into your school, do I need to worry about something like this happening to me again? Do I need to worry about people going, ham on my neck? And really have that conversation. Some of these guys might, they might not know, but they might, I've had coaches reach out to me like, Chris, I didn't know that this could exist. I want to learn more. And that's another piece of what we're doing with this whole education process. Anytime a coach reach out to me, I'm like, listen, coach, I'm like, hit me up. I'm like, we can even do an interview like this. We can record it, and then you could pass it on to your students and just say, hey, never knew something like this could happen, but had a conversation. You, as my student, I want you to be aware. I want you to watch this interview. I think that's a great start. I just did a follow-up interview on my friend Jay. Jay had a very massive stroke. He's still 6 months out and still recovering, which is one of the worst ones I've seen to date. And his coach reached out to me right away and said, Chris, I'd never had any idea that something like this could happen. Help me understand this. So that is why I'm spending the time. I know that we can save lives, because I already know that there's been some accidents that people have reached out to me and said, hey, listen, a gentleman just reached out to me the other day and had a mini stroke, and he said if it wasn't for the interviews he had heard from me, he would have never went and seeked help, seek treatment. So yeah, man, I think just having that conversation and bringing it to the table with those instructors. I mean, even as a student, you're doing them a big service, because they need to be aware of this themselves if they're not already.
But no, that's great advice. Thank you. And so if people want to reach out to you, your Instagram is at BizJitsu. Your YouTube channel
Yep.
is Chris Martin. Anywhere else that people can go to contact you or to get a hold of you if they want to share anything
Yeah.
or
So if you go to my website, which is or not my website, I have like an online business card. It's www.chris, my middle initial D is in David, Martin, chrisdmartin.com. And if you go there, it's got all the links to my blogs, all my social information, so you can link up with me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everything. It's all at the bottom. So it's like a virtual business card. That's where you can find me. And then that's where you can find more of the links to these interviews that I've done with other survivors, and then also articles that I've written that people can pass on. So like articles of, there's on my Medium page, which is my blog, medium.com, BizJitsu, is an article that says ER doctors need to be aware of strokes in jiu-jitsu, and that's a nice article that you could even pass on to a jiu-jitsu coach and have them read. And everything I have, it's got links to examples of people, not just myself. Mine was one story out of 90. People's stories have like they'll watch somebody in an interview, and they're like, that was similar to my story. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
the strokes are happening with different people, and they're all different stories.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for taking the
Yeah,
time to
man.
hop on, and
Thank you.
I think you're doing
I
great work
appreciate
to
it.
spread awareness.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it, Angelo. Thanks for reaching out to me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right,
So it was
brother.
all right. Thank you. Good luck with the work
Yeah,
and be in
you
touch.
too. Thank you, brother.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.